Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the outset, allow me to congratulate you on your election as chair of the Third Committee. We're fortunate to enjoy the benefit of your leadership during these unprecedented times, and I assure you and your Secretariat of our full support. Please allow me as well to express our appreciation to the chair of the last session for a job well done in very, very difficult circumstances. And we also thank the Secretary General for the informative reports that have been shared with all of us under the various agenda items. The Sovereign Order of Malta is one of the oldest humanitarian institutions in the Western world, and in light of its territorial and military history and traditions, it is a subject of international law. We maintain diplomatic relations with over 110 countries, and we enjoy recognized relationships with the European Union, the United Nations, and a multitude of other multilateral bodies. As possibly the smallest state in the world, we have no interest in any political or partisan outcomes, a status which makes us neutral, impartial, and apolitical in the best sense. Although aligned with the Roman Catholic Church and with the full allegiance to our Holy Father, Pope Francis, in the operation of our global humanitarian mission, we make no distinction between persons, religions, or belief systems, and we embrace all of humanity in our work. Through our worldwide relief agency, Malteser International, the Sovereign Order of Malta is permanently present with medical, social, and humanitarian projects in 120 countries. Our 13,500 members, 80,000 permanent volunteers, and a qualified staff of 42,000 professionals, most of whom are medical personnel and paramedics, form an efficient network providing constant support for forgotten or excluded members of society, and for those who have been left behind. We are impressed by the comprehensive agenda which is being proposed for the work of the Third Committee during this 76th session of the General Assembly. Our mandate is that the General Assembly allocates to the Third Committee agenda items relating to a range of social, humanitarian affairs, and human rights issues that affect people all over the world. We are privileged to offer our contribution to what we feel should be the priorities of this agenda based on the values and the mission of our government and our reflection on global needs. We draw attention to the need to provide support for those struggling amid armed conflicts and natural disasters by providing medical assistance, caring for refugees, combating human trafficking, and distributing medicines and basic equipment for survival. In our work, we put human life and its dignity at the center of our operations. The Sovereign Order of Malta shares the general concern that the current pandemic, coupled with political instability in many countries, has exacerbated existing vulnerabilities to human trafficking and contemporary forms of slavery. While the pandemic has increased our awareness of the importance of technology in our daily lives, the Third Committee needs to touch upon an issue that is usually, sometimes, overlooked: the use of new technologies in humanitarian action. Trafficking of human beings is unfortunately a universal scourge. In this sense, there are more slaves today than ever before in history. This poisonous phenomenon is present in almost all countries and is often invisible or sometimes even protected by unscrupulous politicians. Human traffickers abuse technology to identify potential victims on social media, entrapping them in exploitation, advertising deceptive work recruitment and migration opportunities, advertising and controlling victims of slave labor through GPS, hiding traffickers and exploiters, through online anonymity of their criminals and their financial proceeds, and at the same time facilitating illegal organ transplantation. While technology is frequently misused to facilitate trafficking in persons, its positive use can also help us combat trafficking by aiding investigations, enhancing prosecutions, monitoring supply chains, raising awareness, providing services to victims, and shedding new light on the makeup and operation of trafficking networks. Taking this into account, the future success in eradicating human trafficking will depend on how countries and societies are prepared for and equipped to harness technology in their response. The success of this will depend on the willingness of all of our countries and states to respond to the recommendations and mandates from committees such as this. We, at the Sovereign Order, strongly support and defend the human rights of all migrants in all situations. Migration, when poorly regulated or when regulations are simply ignored, creates significant challenges to all stakeholders involved. Our fundamental mission, having been carried out over 9 centuries, has been to provide humanitarian aid to the sick, to the poor, and the vulnerable. Migrants easily fall into these categories. The recent establishment of full diplomatic relations between the Federal Republic of Germany and the Sovereign Order of Malta has helped tremendously in our efforts to protect the human rights and to ensure the dignity of all refugees and migrants. In Germany alone, we're currently operating 140 reception and assimilation facilities with space for more than 44,000 refugees. Additionally, our missions to serve refugee populations in Turkey, in Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria demand much in the way of resources and human investment in the care of people. And we call on the Third Committee in its deliberations to increase the level of attention to these forgotten people in light of our focus on the pandemic. Although many projects of the Order, particularly concerning refugees, might focus primarily on the Middle East, our work covers a diverse array of countries and regions, such as the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Myanmar, South Sudan, Tanzania, Thailand, Uganda, Ukraine, Colombia, Mexico. The Order of Malta supports religious freedom worldwide and calls for the end of persecution because of religious belief. The work of the Third Committee in this area has been exemplary over the past years. However, we are particularly concerned with the situation of religious converts in some countries, where people who change their religion face a distinctly difficult situation and are subject to persecution or discrimination by governments and social institutions. The UN Declaration of Human Rights specifically draws attention to the need for nations to respect the freedom of citizens to change their religious belief and to respect the demands of individual conscience. Not enough has been done to respect this right, and while many nations are strong advocates of this basic freedom, others fall far behind in following this precept. Religious freedom, it must be stressed, promotes social cohesion in overcoming the inequalities exacerbated, for instance, by the pandemic. It allows that faith-based organization and institutions play an active role in crisis management, such as the current health crisis. And they can and do intervene in conflict by emphasizing respect for human rights and dignity. Climate change, while not necessarily on the core agenda of the Third Committee, is having an increasing impact on social, humanitarian and human rights issues. The Order of Malta fully supports the work of the UN, of many countries and partners worldwide, in its effort to address the climate emergency. As natural disasters become more prevalent, weather pattern changes are becoming increasingly frequent, and when the intensity of them becomes deadlier, the work of organizations such as ours in hard-hit places has become more necessary than ever, as we try to protect those most impacted, especially women and young people. Climate change disproportionately affects women because women are more likely to live in poverty than men. They have less access to basic human rights like freedom of movement and land acquisition, and they face violence that escalates during periods of social and political instability. If there is a consensus to be drawn from the general debate at the opening of the 76th session of the General Assembly, it is that the impact of both climate change and the pandemic is of paramount concern to all of us. The Order of Malta shares this concern and continues to be deeply concerned about the COVID-19 pandemic and the health-related crisis, especially in poor and war-ravaged countries. We believe that adequate health care is a fundamental human right. And the pandemic has shown us in stark colors the inequalities worldwide in accessing quality treatment and life-saving medicines, particularly vaccines. Distinguished colleagues, the Third Committee has an opportunity to respond to the multiple global crises that will impact our world for many years to come. We must start a long-term program of resilience building, the rehabilitation of basic socio-medical infrastructure, and the promotion of social cohesion to strengthen health structures across the world at a national level. To all those nations who have been standing by our side, helping us to carry out our mission, we thank you. And to those who are moved by similar concerns, we extend a hand of friendship and support. We look forward to fruitful progress with the Third Committee's agenda over the coming months, and we remain fully at your disposal for increased partnerships and for cooperation in solving, or at the very least, ameliorating some of the world's most pressing needs, while at the same time keeping our focus on an abiding love for the sick and the poor and for those who are left behind. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.